Hey, fifth grade. I'm going to talk to you a little bit on this week's mini lesson about poetry. Have you ever heard the expression, you're a poet and you didn't know it? Well, I bet that is not only figuratively true, but I bet that's literally true. A lot of people see poetry, and number one, when you read it, it's kind of hard to read. It's hard to interpret some of it. And number two, when somebody says, here, be creative and write this poem, sometimes that's a little tricky too. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about poetry because this week you're going to have the opportunity to try your hand at writing a few poems. I think you'll be surprised at how enjoyable it can be, and I think you'll be surprised that you have a little poet right there inside of you. So, I'm going to go ahead and go over this lesson with you, brought to you by Clarendon Learning. Shout out. I really appreciate all the work that they've done, and it's really helping me as I do my distance learning lessons. So, here goes nothing. You're a poet and don't know it. Have you ever heard that comment before? It rhymes. No, poetry has to rhyme. In fact, there's a lot of poetry that does not rhyme. Poetry is writing that expresses feelings and ideas using different styles and rhythms. The rhythm of a poem is the feeling created when the words are read. A poem is made up of the words that expresses those feelings or ideas. Poems are read by poets, the people writing the poems. If you write a poem, you would be a poet at least for a short period of time. There are people who have been poets most of their lives, just like authors of books. Shel Silverstein, very, very famous guy. He's a famous poet who has written children's books. Part of a poem he wrote is shown in the box below. So if you've heard of him, this is not only a poem, but it's the title of one of his books. Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. There is a place where the sidewalk ends, and before the street begins, and there the grass grows soft and white, and there the sun burns crimson bright, and there the moonbird rests from his flight to cool in the peppermint wind. Man, that's kind of different from a lot of his poems, isn't it? Because if you know anything about him, you'll know he's usually pretty funny and pretty zany, but this is beautiful. Do you see how he took that just beautiful imagery? I mean, peppermint wind? Ugh, I can almost feel that wind on my face right now. That is what poetry is supposed to do. It's supposed to move you. You're supposed to pause for a minute and just go, oh, wow, or laugh or whatever reaction, but that's what poetry is supposed to do. One of the best ways to write poetry, though, is to read poetry. There have been many famous poems written and not so famous poems, but they all have one thing in common. They express feelings and ideas in a special way, such as in the popular poem To the Right. Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. Yes, it's kind of cliche, but is it a poem? Absolutely. It started somewhere as just a poem, and then it got kind of cut on crazy, but it's amazing the power of just those words. Now, poetry writing usually uses most of the same rules as regular writing, but sometimes, and some of you may love to hear this, poets break a few of those rules. If you're a little rebel at heart, you're going to love poetry. You may see poems without capital letters, gasp, or you may see them without punctuation. No, that's okay. It's poetry, guys. That's the beauty of it. Read part of a poem by E. E. Cummings. Notice he doesn't even capitalize his own name. In the box to the right as an example. Anyone lived in a pretty how town by E. E. Cummings. Anyone lived in a pretty how town with up so floating many bells down. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, he sang his didn't he danced he did. And I know you're probably like, rewind. Did I even understand that? Well, guess what? That's his play on words. That's his interpretation. And honestly, sometimes poets clearly express what they want you to feel or think, and some of them don't. Sometimes it's up for your interpretation, and it might not be the same as what they were going for. And that's okay too. So This week's challenge is to write poems. And again, it can be a little daunting. It can be a little overwhelming if you're not a natural writer, if you don't just naturally love it. But what if you do this and you're like, I kind of dig poetry, or you could say it's all right, it's okay. Or maybe you're like, oh my God, poetry is the best thing to happen in my life. I can express myself. I don't know, but give yourself a chance. Give it a little whirl. So, how do you write a poem, you may ask? Well, poems can be as short as a few words or as long as an entire book. There are several things to think about when deciding to write poetry. Number one, brainstorm some ideas. Think about what you'd like to write about. Do you have special feelings about something you want to express? Have an idea that you like? Sometimes thinking what to write about is the hardest part of writing a poem. Guess what, guys? The world around you. Think about looking outside, even though it looks like spring, but it feels like winter again. Think about the food that you like to eat, snacks in the kitchen. Think about quarantine time and social distance learning and what it feels like to be away from the classroom. You could think about video games or friends or love or family or being alone. I don't know. There's so many possibilities. So don't say, I don't know what to write about. Just kind of go with it. Let your hand write and let your mind go free. So the second helpful hint for how to write a poem is to write the words you want to use in regular sentences. So take out words that you don't need, maybe add a few. If you want to make a poem that rhymes, you may need to use other words with the same meaning. So guess what? In the first box down here, they just wrote sentences. This is what they wanted to write about, and they wrote a few sentences. There was a bird sitting in a tree all alone. It was red and had a black stripe. It was singing a song in the morning. I think it was talking to me. So that's it. That's just a few sentences together. So look what they did in the next step box. They took out the words and they tried to find other words if they needed to say what they needed to say. Bird sitting in tall tree alone, red with black stripes, singing song loudly in the morning. Think it was calling out to me. What was he saying? His song is like words. So there you go. That's not the poem yet, though, is it? Your next step is to take what you've done and use some comparisons. Pretend the object is like a human, or use other creative writing tools. Become part of the poem. Be the object of the poem. You are the bird. Feel the emotions of the poem you want to create. Use your imagination too for great ideas. This is that time, guys, when you want to run to me or run to your teacher and say, can I write this in this poem, or is this right? Guess what we're going to do? We're going to go, well, is that what you want to say? And you say yes. Well, then it's right, because there's no right or wrong. Now, take a look at what they did here. They took sentences, pulled out the words, tried to, get what they needed, simplify it, and look at this poem. It's actually quite lovely. Bird sitting in a tree, alone like me, red and a black stripe, so easy to see. Singing loudly, words I can almost hear. Out of my eye comes a single lone tear. Think of him, sad and lonely in that tree, song with special words calling out to me. I want to help you, finally I say. However, I was too late. He flew away. Man alive, did you feel the sadness there? I don't think there's any question that that's kind of a sad little mood that poet gives you. So it really is that simple, you guys. And this week we're going to give you some writing prompts that actually will help guide you through the style of poem that we're going to share with you. So again, notice the changes made from the beginning when the poem was first an idea to the final poem written as above. As with all writing, it takes time to write a poem. The poem you write doesn't have to be great. Sometimes it will be. As long as you like it and you're happy with it, then it's great. The title for the sample poem could be The Bird, or The Lonely Bird, or simply Alone. Just like when you write the poem, it's your title. It's usually best to think of the title when you have completed the poem, but you know what? You might have a great little light bulb go off and go, ooh, I want to call it this, and that's okay too. Learning about poetry will not only help you write the poem, but it will also help you with all different other kinds of writing. It really will make you better at other writing because you'll have more colorful language to draw from to make people want to read what you have to say. Your voice is important. So, quick poetry trips. Oh, good grief. Quick poetry tips. Let the poem lead you. Rhyme, don't rhyme. Use lively verbs. Use interesting words. Write what you like. Write freely, it can change. Don't start writing it like it's a poem. Just write. Experiment with the words. It can be fun or serious, happy or sad, short or long. Take breaks, have fun, do your best. It's okay. You got this. You can do this. Now, I don't want you to worry about this right here. This is just, we're done with that. So, I promise, just give it a try and you will not be sorry. I can't wait to see your creations. Reach out if you have any questions. I don't know if I shouted out, but I'm going to. Good old Clarendon Learning for this amazing lesson. They have really been a great help in my distance learning. So, here you go, guys. The challenge is yours. The world is your oyster. Until next time, see you later.